Welcome to Village Church Connections. I'm David Pavey. England expects that every man will do his duty. It was the 21st of October, 1805. The maritime battle of Trafalgar was about to begin off the southwest coast of Spain. 27 British ships, under the direction of Admiral Lord Nelson, waited out of sight of the land. For 12 years, the British fleet had impeded Napoleon from invading England by blocking his ports. But on this day, Napoleon ordered his primary fleet of 33 French and Spanish ships out of the Spanish port of Cadiz. This would be the decisive naval engagement of the Napoleonic Wars. Admiral Lord Nelson was aware of his responsibility to the United Kingdom. Duty is the great business of a sea officer. All private considerations must give way to it, however painful it may be, he exclaimed. Doing his duty had already cost Nelson dearly. He had lost his right arm in one battle and his right eye in another. Once the French and Spanish ships were in sight, Nelson, who was aboard the British flagship HMS Victory, ordered his flagman to send the now famous signal to his fleet. England expects that every man this day will do his duty. The battle was engaged. The Franco-Spanish fleet lost 22 of their 33 ships, without a single British vessel being lost, though some were badly damaged, and many sailors on both sides went to their eternal destiny. Nelson won the battle, but lost his life. They carried him below deck, and as he lay dying from a bullet wound, his surgeon heard him murmur, "Thank God I have done my duty." The battle gave the United Kingdom control of the seas, removing all possibility of a French invasion and the conquest of Britain, which had been part of Napoleon's game plan. England expects that every man will do his duty. In contemporary society, we hear much more about rights than responsibilities, that is, duty. People feel they have a right to this, that, and the other thing. They lobby for civil rights, women's rights, workers' rights, animal rights, etc., ad infinitum. But the Bible's emphasis is on responsibilities, duty, rather than rights. Christian believers are positioned as servants. In their letters, both Paul and James, the apostles, introduced themselves as servants. Paul, a servant of Christ. James, a servant of God and of the Lord Jesus Christ. England expects that every man will do his duty. Jesus expects that every Christian will do his duty. In the Gospel of Luke chapter 17, he taught his disciples as follows, quoted in contemporary English. Suppose one of you has a servant who comes in from plowing the field or tending the sheep. Would you take his coat, set the table, and say, "Sit down and eat"? Or would you be more likely to say, "Prepare dinner, change your clothes, and wait table for me until I finish my coffee. Then go to the kitchen and have your supper"? Does the servant get special thanks for doing what's expected of him? It's the same with you. When you've done everything expected of you, be matter of fact and say, "Well, the work is done. What we were told to do, we did," said Jesus. The central point of the parable is not that God is ungrateful for the obedience of disciples because he expects such service anyway. Rather, the point is that disciples cannot boast before God about their service. It's a matter of duty. Nelson said, "Duty is the great business of a sea officer. All private considerations must give way to it, however painful it may be." The Apostle Paul put it another way. Soldiers don't get tied up in the affairs of civilian life, for then they cannot please the officer who enlisted them. We can't negotiate with the master. If you do this, I'll do that. No, we serve him without taking credit for our actions. We tend to be experts at analyzing what needs to be done and not so quick at volunteering for action. A friend of mine has a sign on his desk reading, "Lord, make me useful in thy service, especially in an advisory capacity." Lord Nelson was onto something. We must do our duty. If we want to please God, we must be less concerned about our perceived rights and more concerned about our duty to serve him with diligence. Then, when you've done everything expected of you, be matter of fact and say, well, the work is done. What we were told to do, we did. How wonderful when we approach the end of our days on earth, if we can look back and say with Nelson, thank God I have done my duty. And thank you for tuning in once again to Village Church Connections.